In brief moments, we mark our beginning. In compassion, we find freedom. Welcome to your ledger, where you author your story. Episode 6 of The Quiet Ledger, The Power of the Pause. Please remember that the TQL series offers gentle guidance and metaphorical frameworks for financial wellness. This is not professional financial, legal, or therapeutic advice. Always consult a qualified professional before making specific financial decisions. Welcome, I am Teach, the mender. Last time we calibrated the personal compass and practiced reading what our values are actually pointing toward. Today we walk the worn path, turning our attention to the space between what happens and what we do next. The mender knows something about the worn path. It exists because the same route has been walked many times. The ground has shaped itself to the pattern, and the pattern continues, in part because the path is there and familiar. The mender understands that the most powerful moment on a worn path is the pause before the next step, that brief space where the next move is available to choose with awareness of what came before. The pause is where the path opens. Today we practice finding that pause and using it with intention. Let us anchor ourselves in the now. Breathe in deeply, gathering the stillness, and breathe out, releasing tension in your jaw and shoulders. One more, inviting calm focus, and out, settling the mind into peace. You are perfectly safe here. The worn path, a path that exists because the same route has been walked many times. The ground shaped by repetition, the way ahead. Familiar because the feet have been here before. Consider the worn paths you carry around money. The habitual response when a bill arrives, the automatic direction spending takes in certain kinds of weeks, the pattern that appears when a particular kind of pressure rises. These paths were formed by earlier decisions, earlier seasons, earlier conditions that may or may not still apply. The mender understands something about the worn path. It continues because it is there. The ground has shaped itself to the walking, and the walking continues, in part because the path is familiar and ready. The most significant moment on a worn path is the pause before the next step, that brief space where the next move is available to choose with awareness of what came before. The mender invites that pause today, a beat of honest attention between what arrives and what you do next. The mender also understands that the worn path can be walked differently without being abandoned. The same terrain, a different quality of presence on it. That difference is where the path begins to change, and changing one step at a time is the only way a path ever does. The worn path deepens with each return. The pause is where the change begins. One observation shapes everything that follows in. The power of the pause, offered by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who understood that the natural world moves at a pace that human urgency rarely honors, and that the most enduring choices align with that rhythm. Adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience. The mender meets this insight with recognition. This is the ground that supports the power of the pause. In the practice of creating space for thoughtful choices, this is the quality the mender tends most carefully. The pace of nature is available in every moment that asks for a decision. It arrives with the breath. It arrives with the willingness to wait, the thoughtful choice, the one made with a breath taken first, the one allowed to settle before it is acted upon, moves at the pace Emerson named. The pause is the interval in which perspective arrives. Emerson recognized that patience is the mechanism of lasting change. The choice made with patience carries something the choice made in urgency rarely does: a quality of care, a quality of intention, a steadiness that remains when the urgency has passed. The mender realizes that the clearest decisions in a life are the ones given the time the decision actually required, and that the pause is where the truest answer most often lives. The mender tends this steadily into every decision that asks for space. Our first anchor is orientation. There's often a moment when the impulse to spend feels real and immediate, and the choice about whether to spend is separate. The urge arrives as a notification, as a desire, as a pressure that feels urgent. It is real. But the decision? That belongs to you. When you can observe the impulse with awareness, when you create even the smallest space between the feeling and the action, clarity emerges. In that pause, you remember what actually matters. You recognize what is true need and what is social pressure dressed as need. You distinguish between the pull towards spending and the choice to spend with intention. That distinction is available to you. The space between impulse and action has been yours to inhabit. Noticing it is the beginning of choosing well. Our second anchor is action. I invite you to consider taking 3 breaths before any choice this week. It may be pausing when a text message or sales ad arrives, breathing before you respond, and maybe taking 3 deliberate breaths before opening a statement or account, creating space between the moment you see the number and the story that follows. It may be slowing down when a purchase feels urgent, noticing the pressure before the decision becomes final. It may be pausing when everyone around you is adopting something new, breathing before you respond. In those 3 breaths, something shifts. The noise quiets. You might discover that those 3 breaths create space where you can choose, consider, then act. Space where your actual values guide you. The urgency softens. You may find that over time, the small practice becomes steady ground, a place to return to, whenever a moment asks more of you than the moment deserves. Our third anchor is reframing. If you pay attention, you will notice the space between receiving a prompt and making a choice. That space is where you hold the pen. Every pause is an act of authorship. Choosing to wait is choosing to remain in your own story. You are the author of your spending choices, the one who thinks then acts. The capacity to pause grows with practice. Each time you return to that breath, that space, that moment of choosing, you are strengthening something real. This is among the deepest forms of decision-making. Each return to that pause builds something steady in you. We are cultivating the practice of writing our story with intention, one breath at a time, one pause at a time, one clear choice at a time. This is how steadiness grows, quietly. With each return, consider the nature of a worn path. How it came to be, by returning, again and again. The earth remembers each step. The path grows clearer with each pass. Smooth, where others have paused, settled, where feet have rested. The path keeps what patience carved, quietly, one return at a time, steady, receiving. The edges softened by returning feet, the center worn smooth, the path showing where others paused. Notice the space between stimulus and response. Where the breath lives, that small interval between the pull of a decision and the choice itself. The pause deepens with each return. Each return makes it more familiar. Each breath, before a choice, settles something real. The breath itself, as the pause, the recognition that the space is here. Consider the nature of what a worn path transmits to those who walk it after you. 3 breaths, that is all. The path keeps the memory of every return. Each pause you take deepens the way. What you practice becomes the path itself, worn smooth, steady, familiar. This is what it means to create space for thoughtful choices. The practice travels, the path worn by your returning. As we return to our shared space, the power of the pause invites a gentle shift in how we create space between an impulse and a choice. You might consider 3 breaths before any financial decision that arrives with pressure, whether the pressure is coming from something trending everywhere right now, a commitment that feels time pressured, a response to a request for money, or returning to a choice you are still sitting with. You might notice what happens in that small space. The noise of the world has a chance to quiet. The social pressure has a chance to soften. The artificial urgency begins to reveal itself for what it actually is. Something steadier tends to surface. When the space is there for it, the mender simply asks for the pause. That is the whole of it, for the willingness to create even the smallest space between impulse and choice. Thank you for being here, for being willing to create the space between an impulse and a choice, and to practice the quiet act of letting your own judgment arrive before acting. In the coming days, you might find yourself in a moment of pressure and noticing the pause available before the familiar pattern moves you forward, finding that what arrives in that space serves the choice better than urgency would have brought. I am Teach, the mender. Thank you for returning to this ledger. May you move through your days with the pause available to you in every moment that asks for it, and the growing recognition that the space between impulse and choice is where your authorship lives. Until we meet again. Next time on your journey in the series, we will lighten the lighten basket, releasing what no longer serves our well-being.